Hello, we are Julian Chica, Mateo Rosso, Germán Lopez, and Viviana Mejia. It is an honor to present you this project. Today, we are going to tell you our dream school called Organic School of Minds, based on the ideas of philosophers who had revolutionary ideas of education: Montessori, Rousseau, Robinson, Dewey, Plato, and the Taoism. We need an integrated education for the society. Also, we need human beings curious, thoughtful, and capable to face the world. Now, the aims and vision of our school. We focus on the talents and abilities of our students. We believe that students are the main architects of knowledge and their future. We offer students the tools to enhance their skills and explore their interests. We are committed with free, universal, and compulsory education. According with our research, we decide to divide the education into phases. Primary that is for people between 0 and 12 years old. Secondary that is for people between 13 and 17 years old. The last phase is divided in 3 categories: Generation A, Generation B, and Generation C. We will explain in detail later. And the school will be free with government help, private donations, and profitable projects made by students. And remember, you will always be of an age for starting.
With this in mind, the architecture of our school will be focused on providing students with ample space to promote knowledge. A possible example of our school will be the photo in the presentation we are showing, in which we can see that the space allows a great entry of light and large spaces for students. As promoted by the philosophy of Montessori, the learning process is based on the independence of students, where the freedom that these spaces give them is ideal. In the same vein, we also seek to incorporate some of Rousseau's ideas which emphasize the freedom of students to experiment and connect with nature. Likewise, we believe that simplifying the architectural structures of our school will be very important in changing the mental models of education that have endured in our society. As Ken Robinson mentions in his books, we have to change those spaces that evoke that old model of education based on the mass production of the Industrial Revolution. In order to do so, the learning spaces must provide the necessary tools to carry out the respective activities for our students' talents, which are obviously different for each of our students. In order to fulfill this objective, we will separate the learning spaces into 2 phases. The first one is the primary education, where we want the students to rotate between different classrooms in which they can learn in a specific way a set of basic topics or themes in our micro society. But as mentioned in Dewey's philosophy, these different experiences do not have the same value, and therefore the teacher must guide them through these different classrooms. The second spaces are dedicated to secondary and tertiary education, where we will seek to build classrooms that will develop and practice those innate skills found in primary education. This is very similar to Plato's theory of education, where population was divided according to their abilities. But we believe that mechanisms like ikigai will allow us to understand their tastes and abilities, where they will have the freedom to change their specialization of their ability or preference. On the other hand, we believe that these spaces should allow students to be more creative and healthy, but also form different human values that are usually not developed in the academic environment. Therefore, we propose that students should choose to practice a mandatory sport that requires teamwork, and therefore we will adapt the spaces of our institution for a wide variety of practices. Finally, as Dewey mentions, education is a process that happens constantly, where expeditions can be a very important uh, process for learning. Our school will seek to propose specialized trips for the skills of each student, where they have the opportunity to see the application of their skills in the field and expand their interest. Just to remember, this is very similar to the philosophy of Rousseau, where people must explore their freedom outside the traditional educational spaces that our society imposes.
Okay, now we're going to talk about materials. And in terms of technology, I think that is important to include for students tablets and Microsoft 365 and a huge amount of databases. So we think that it is important because it will help students to reach more since they have the right tools on the right time, and also to have new ideas. Because these tools help students to create new relations on their minds and have revolutionary ideas. Okay, on the next part, we can see that we suggest to include some self-correcting learning tools, which we want to include especially on the first years of school, because we believe that it helps students to have a natural development. Could you pass to the following? They are sensory-based learning tools, which isolate a concept. So, for instance, you want to work on the alphabet, so you isolate that concept and work on that in order to improve. And I think that we also love about these self-correcting learning tools is that they are auto-instructional. So we believe that it's important that the tool helps students to know their mistakes and correct them. So we believe on these self-correct learning tools, which were proposed by Montessori. Okay, now I'm going to move on to curriculum, and I want to work on principles, stages, and topics. So in terms of principles, I have 5 of them, which are teamwork, flexibility in terms of selecting the subject they want, and also the intensity of them. Also microcosm, because I think that it's important that students create their own universe and almost like a city for them. So I also include that. We also believe that it's important to have an inductive development. So we begin with a basic knowledge, and from then we work to construct the rest. We move to topics, and it's almost like a summarize of the things that we mentioned before. So we want to include on the primary education 100% obligatory subjects, and we have 2 phases of them. So it's from 0 to 4, which we want to construct values and how to live in a community, and also phase 2, which is from 5 to 12 to 11, which we want to construct a motivation to specialize and a first touch with the world. Now on the secondary education, we want to the students select their talents and the intensity, and with the help of an advisor teacher, we want that they construct their own life project. And also it's important to note that we want that students go to a mandatory physical workout. And in terms of tertiary education, we want that the students work with universities in order to use their material and create publications and more material to increase the knowledge. And finally, we think that it's important to give feedback to teachers. So that's all about the topics and the curriculum, and you go with Julian.
When it comes to learning and teaching, our school's approach is very deeply influenced by Dewey's philosophy. Among the key ideas that we take from him are the self-realization of the individual and how learning happens when we reflect upon our own experience. The principle of continuity, which means that all experience, past, present, and future, are all interrelated and influence the learning process. Problem-solving project as a method for teaching and learning, which aims to achieve learning by doing, solving problems and carrying out projects. Additionally, social interaction and community are a very important aspect of our teaching. In this context, the role of our teachers is to create learning and meaningful experiences and make sure that they are educative. In this sense, the teacher acts as a guiding agent, advising students. Teachers also have to foster a sense of community among students, and therefore, in this context, they act as a social leader rather than as an authority. This is important in the way he maintains harmony because they don't impose anything, and he encourages that discipline comes from within the students. Relating to the method of teaching, it is based on the problem-solving project, which is designed problematic situations that promote its students' interests and purposes. These problems have to be related with present-day practical life and are strongly tied to their context. These projects are carried on in diverse multidisciplinary groups in order to develop social skills and promote cooperation. When it comes to our evaluation and assessment, it is based on a principle of reflection and growth. It abolishes standardized numeric and dichotomic grading in favor of a focus on the process. And because every student is different, we need to implement individualized qualitative assessment of strengths and weaknesses in order to promote growth. Constant teacher counseling and guided reflection is the main principle of this assessment process. Here we can see Dewey's idea of continuity of experience and how past interacts with external and internal conditions to promote growth into the future. Thank you for your time.